ask our panelists to come up, along with A.J. Robinson, who's the president of the Central Atlanta Progress, Brett Jukes, who is the EVP and CCO of Blank Family of Business, the AMB Sports and Entertainment, and Anna Roach, who is executive director and CEO of the Atlanta Regional Commission. We thought it was important to have a program talking about downtown Atlanta and all the exciting activities that are going on within this community. And so we appreciated A.J. bringing together Brett and Anna to talk about that, and also to give us a little bit of background on where we're going. So think about your questions as we go through the panel discussion, and we'll make sure we have time to be able to get answers from this distinguished panel. A.J.?
Okay, thanks, John. I'm glad we had those member recognitions. I was thinking about giving away the best Dragon Con costume to Rotary members. Actually, Bill Bowling asked me if I was going to wear my Dragon Con costume. What I didn't tell him is, as I walk around the streets of Atlanta, downtown these days, people think this is my Dragon Con costume. Okay, so we did have a great Dragon Con convention here, 70, 80,000 people a couple weeks ago. How many of you were here in March when we did have a panel on downtown real estate? I think a few of you. So that kind of laid the groundwork, I think, more for, we probably should have had this panel first. But we're not going to talk too much about real estate today. We did that a few weeks ago, or a few months ago. But if you want to talk about real estate, particularly, people keep asking me about, every time I see them, what's going to happen to the office market, something. I'm happy to mention that for sure. What we are going to talk today is about really the vibrancy, relevancy, and importance of why downtown is important, and how do we kind of preserve and enhance it. This is an appropriate spot to do this for a downtown Rotary meeting. I've done it, I think, a number of years back, but it's been a while. For me, there's kind of three buckets of why downtown is a little bit different from all the rest of the commercial districts of Metro Atlanta. And you may or may not agree with me, but I do think the three lend itself to the people who we've asked to come talk here. One is, this is, regardless of what you think, this is the biggest collection of, downtown has the biggest collection of civic organizations and therefore civic leadership in the metro area. Just for the fact that what we just recognized on the board, or the fact that all of you are involved somehow in some civic organization, maybe touching downtown or maybe office downtown. And that, to me, shows a caring community. That we care about the future not only of downtown, but the future of Atlanta and the surrounding area. The second that I tell everyone who comes into my office of why downtown is visibility. There is no other place in the metro area that has the visible assets, the history, the places where people gather than downtown. When the blimp comes here for an event, it's usually the skyline of downtown. We got the Capitol, the Stadium, Centennial Park, the Westin. There's too many assets that are very visible on the skyline, and that to me is about branding and marketing. And the third is really my own interpretation, is that our downtown community is probably the most authentic community because of its history in the area. Everything kind of grew out of downtown. 100 years ago, when Rotary was a little bit different meeting here, there was only downtown Atlanta. We didn't have the big commercial districts that you see around the metro area or even in the city. So to me, that's about uniqueness. There's just no other place with the rich history. A lot of good things have happened downtown and a lot of bad things have happened. So with that introduction of what we're going to talk about, these two folks, I think, lend themselves to talking about these areas. For civic leadership, Anna, as you know, has spent a great deal of time in our community, particularly at Fulton County, and now has the big job at the Atlanta Regional Council, and just really has an insight into what goes on from a civic standpoint in our community. And Brett, who is a newer member to Atlanta, you may not know him as part of the Arthur's team with the Falcons and the foundation and all the businesses that Arthur's in, but Brent is a marketing and communication specialist, and he's got his finger in everything that is going on in that world, in the A&B world. And I think you'll enjoy his insights into where we are as a community and where we're going. And then you have me to deal with maybe on uniqueness and history, even though I'm the oldest of these three for sure. And just because I've walked around downtown a lot, I've acquired a lot of history. So with that, let me go sit down and we'll begin our conversation. But I will say, in closing this introduction, the last few weeks, excuse me, have been incredibly exciting down here, even though I know Rotary folks sometimes don't go to all the things that we have down here, but I just made a quick list of the last few weeks. First of all, I was talking with Brett. We had 3 Beyonce concerts here, 70-something thousand people over a long weekend, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. Of course, we had the Trump circus came to town there for a week. And guess what? The circus will be back in a few weeks as well. So that's going to be with us for quite some time. We had the large population of students at Georgia State came back en masse after being away most of them for the summer, and they also came to the AU campus, and they came to Emory, and they came to Georgia Tech. All of these folks come in and out of downtown. Some of them live downtown and go to these other schools, so that's always a big deal. I mentioned Dragon Con. We had the guys, Gary and John, talk about the football games a couple weeks ago. So those are big. And then somewhere in here we've had a show from America's Mart, which continues to pump out show after show, bringing people to town. Falcons games, United games. How many of you are acting, this is a big week, really big week. We got Messi coming to town on Saturday night, and then we got the Packers on Sunday. But how many of you are actually going to the Mexico-Uzbekistan soccer game tomorrow night? We got a couple of hands? Well, good for you. There's 40-something thousand people coming tomorrow night. I think it's tomorrow night, right? Yeah. To that game. Now, who would have thought downtown Atlanta or anywhere in Atlanta would be hosting Mexico and Uzbekistan in a soccer game? So it's all quite exciting. So I'm going to start with Anna. So Anna, you've been at this a while. And now you've got this big regional job. Maybe you can share with us, where do you think downtown fits into the whole region? Why is it important to the region, and what can we learn from that?
Yeah, thank you for that introduction. I think you summed up a lot of why the Atlanta Regional Commission has a focus on downtown. Because it really is the nucleus of what we now know to be the Metro Atlanta region. It spans 28 counties, 6.1 million people. It all started just a few blocks away from us where those railroad tracks crossed over, right? And so as I travel to peer regions all around the United States, it's just increasingly important to me that we maintain the vibrance and the significance of our downtown. No matter how much the rest of the region develops, it's really important that your downtown is not a forgotten part of your region, because it is where it all started. And so I think that is why we're very focused on it. It has driven much of the development that has happened across the region. From industrialization for a period of time, how we came out of the Civil War and reinvented ourselves as a downtown, that period of time as well, how downtown survived the sort of suburbanization of the area as well, and how we reinvented ourselves around that convention space work. All of it is important, and I think the reinvention of downtown is continuing. You talk about how we office space and that market has changed, it is time now for downtown to think about what version are we up to, AJ? Maybe 5.0 is going to look like. So very, very critical, because it really does drive the development for the rest of the region.
Fantastic. All right, Brett, all these events, you guys are part of a lot of these events. Vibrancy is something we work on every day. How do you view where we are in terms of being an appealing product of everything that is coming here and will come here in the future?
That's a great question. The one thing AJ didn't say, those pictures of me and him, that was before the stadium was built. And you can see what that did to both of us. It's a great question, and I appreciate being here. And I appreciate the plug for the soccer matches this week and football and everything else. What a lot of people are aware of, but maybe not know the details, is we're constantly, Katie knows this for sure, we're constantly in the bid process for major events, constantly. It never stops. For Super Bowls or World Cups or college football championships or EPL games, or just, it goes on and on and on. And I think you can't underestimate the importance of the city and the downtown in those bid processes. Stadium's great. They come, they see it once, they've seen it on TV, they're like, great, they got a stadium. What about the rest? And it matters so much, the walkability, the ability of restaurants and hotels and access and public safety, all those things matter a disproportionate amount in that bid process. And sometimes I think we take that for granted, that, oh, we got a great stadium, of course they're coming here. That's 1 out of 10 boxes that you have to check as a bid city. And so, the fact that we've gone through, we'll be the first market to repeat as host for the College Football Championship in 25. World Cup, obviously coming. Mega event, we'll find out hopefully fourth quarter or right after the new year what we'll be hosting. The fact that those things are coming shows that we're doing a really good job on a lot of things. I don't think anybody should get comfortable that we've done enough and we can coast the rest of the way. They're building a gorgeous stadium in Nashville that is unbelievable location-wise. Jacksonville's putting several $100 million into rebuilding their building. Charlotte eventually will figure something out. So the competitive landscape of us needing to keep downtown vibrant, viable, and access and public safety is every bit as important or more so than the fact that we have a world-class stadium over there.
So one of the challenges that we have as a city is public infrastructure. I don't think anybody here will disagree with in the prioritization of public infrastructure. So in downtown, we have the oldest infrastructure in the city and the region. We're constantly trying to figure out ways to improve it. One of the things that Ann and I have been working on is a little project called The Stitch, where we're trying to bridge over the highway. I wonder if you could just talk about that a little bit in the context of the whole region and the competition for your dollars and federal dollars and state dollars and county dollars. Where is a region, and where does downtown fit in from an infrastructure standpoint?
So the Atlanta Regional Commission is the metropolitan planning organization for Metro Atlanta, and essentially what that means is that there is no federal transportation dollar that gets expended in the region without having come through the Atlanta Regional Commission. And in that capacity, we allocate approximately $3 billion on an annual basis across that 20-county region. AJ talks about the Stitch, and I want to sort of connect it to something that Brett said. The work is not done. There are many shiny places popping up all across the region, and everybody wants to be in whatever is new and shiny. And if we're not careful to make sure that we are reinvesting in downtown and that we are refreshing our amenities and the like, then we're going to find ourselves in a dying downtown. And we certainly don't want that, especially given all of the success we've had with attracting conventions and sporting events so far. And so the Stitch does represent one of those significant public infrastructure projects that could really catalyze and drive development across all of our downtown. So I'm particularly excited about its potential, not just for what it could do for downtown, but its potential for catalyzing development in areas south of I-20 that have historically been underinvested as well. So yes, I agree with you, AJ. Public infrastructure in downtown is important. ARC does get to prioritize some of that funding through the way that we invest across Metro Atlanta, and yes, definitely looking forward to getting additional funding from the federal government to move the Stitch project forward.
Brett, you mentioned the World Cup, and many of us were here for the Olympics and enjoyed the run-up to that, and a lot of things got done. What, in your opinion, do we need to get done? I mean, we need to get it done for all events, but particularly for the World Cup, where we're going to have this huge amount of media here, a huge amount of folks from all over the world. Just give us what's on your list, with being nice about it.
I'm always nice, AJ. You know, I most appreciate that you said the storytelling, 'cause that's what I do by trade. I know I wasn't here for the Olympics, and I hear about it everywhere I go, about how amazing the Olympics were. That'll be this big compared to what World Cup will be. And part of it is because all of you have in your hand a phone, and the global audience that will have an attention on Atlanta will be nothing like we've ever seen before. Particularly if we get the right mix of assets, games, and other things that we want and expect we will. It is an incredible opportunity to tell the Atlanta story in a way that we've never had the opportunity. And I think we're well on our way to establishing ourselves as the capital of soccer in America, which is a really important thing for our businesses. I think it's a really important thing for everybody in this room to take ownership of that. The World Cup is going to come. We will tell the soccer story. The stadium will shine. All of those things can almost promise. You can undo a lot of that if you look at other major events where they have a lot of infrastructure problems, or there's crime incidents and things like that can unwind a lot of really good, shiny pictures and happy stories and all these kind of things. So they are huge events. They benefit all of us. They require all of us to really be ready. So we've got to do a good job from an infrastructure standpoint, transportation, all of those things that we're really good at. We have to be good at them 3 years from now, really good, because there'll be a lot more attention on all those kind of logistical things. And I think as a big event, I've worked my whole career on big events. I hate the 4 or 5 days before the event, because it's all the news is about problems, like, you know, the long lines in Qatar at the last World Cup. It was like over and over every hour on the news. And those things just get magnified because you have a lot of media that they don't have games to cover yet. Well, what's the next thing? Well, what's going on with the event? And so there will be a lot of pressure on us. The good news is, I mean, we still hear about people around the NFL, from people around the NFL, of how darn good a Super Bowl this was, just how walkable and how good the logistics were between the airport and downtown and the restaurants and everything being very efficient. And having been to every Super Bowl for the last 17 years, I'm biased, but I don't know one that was easier. And so we have a track record. We can do this. We do have to make sure that we are secure, number one, more than anything else. And that takes money. That takes resourcing for sure. And we need to make sure we can be able to move people from place to place. And if we do that, the storytelling globally from Atlanta will be unbelievable.
And some of that public infrastructure investment is already underway. Many of you are aware of the federal award to MARTA in collaboration with the City of Atlanta for the 5-point station. That should be, based on their timeline for construction, in place and updated in time for the World Cup. Everybody cross your fingers. And so there are things that are already underway, that investments that are being made that really should put us in a good position to address some of the things that you said, the Summerhill BRT as well, which connects to other transportation modes, which will assist with moving people from here to there, continuing to invest in the Beltline and connect it to other trails and other modes of transportation as well. So there are some things that are underway, but we could and should do much better, to your point, Brett.
Hey, AJ, one other point to make is, and this is a little bit dangerous when we always talk about these mega events. We have other events that really matter and have a long tail to them. So just think of the Messi game this week. You're going to have more media on any soccer match than we've ever had. You have the entire leadership of FIFA, CONCACAF, Major League Soccer all in the building. We believe we're going to retake our record for largest crowd for a home event that Charlotte sneaked away from us a couple years ago. That matters, because those people who are still making decisions about what events we get during World Cup are going to be in our building in a magical time. The Beyonce folks, you know, the Taylor Swift, which I know AJ was there with his sparkly boa, but Taylor Swift, Beyonce, their production groups, if they have a great experience in the city, that word gets out to other promoters like that. If they have a bad experience, their fans magnify it. So I don't want to overemphasize the major events and underemphasize just the fact that we're bringing thousands and thousands and thousands of people to downtown. They all have a megaphone now, so really important.
All right, get your questions ready. I want to make sure we get all those tough ones answered. I'm going to break my own rule and make one comment about the real estate market, since I am a real estate guy. Many people post-COVID are very worried about office market, not only in downtown but across the country. We have some particular visible buildings that are historic and just, in my opinion, are just not going to come back as office buildings. So we have undertaken, and everyone in the media is following this idea of converting some of these buildings to housing. It's not an easy process. Everything is like the sun, the moon, the stars all have to line up in order to convert anything to any big building. But in particular, if you have a rectangular building that's empty, has windows on all sides, maybe historic, so you get historic tax credits. There's a lot of things that could line up to do that. So we've undertaken a study, we're in process, by a big national group that's going to give us an idea of whether or not we can do some of these major buildings like 2 Peachtree that the city's trying to do and is taking bids on, or maybe part of Peachtree Center. Maybe some other buildings. It's not necessarily just about downtown, believe me. It's other submarkets are having the same challenge. So I would just tell you to stay tuned about this. One of the things I've learned of 45 years in the real estate business is everybody seems to, wring their hands about the future of real estate, and when there's a recession particularly. But what I've learned is that the buildings don't go anywhere. The money goes someplace. Usually somebody loses some money, but people still figure out what to do with the buildings. It's painful for financial institutions, painful for developers, but in the end, really well-built buildings get converted into something, or they stay the same use with a different buyer with a lower basis. So just stay tuned and be patient, but I think some of these historic buildings that we do have are going to go through a process. One of the most fascinating one really is 2 Peachtree. Many of you may remember that was the headquarters of First National Bank of Atlanta prior to the Olympics. Everybody was worried that 5 Points had emptied out. and the Woodruff Foundation came along and bought the building and gave it to the state of Georgia and said, put some people in here, which they did for almost 30 years. And now the state is consolidating and the building became empty, the city's buying it, and now we're going to try to turn it into housing. So that's one of those buildings that actually does lend itself, but it's big and it's challenging, and we're going to see if we can do it. All right, we're going to open it up to questions. I think there's microphones here. Former presidents get the first question.
Congratulations, Brett. I know it made it a much happier Monday for you.
No
So
doubt.
when we had the talk on March 27th, we had Brian McGowan from Centennial, we had April Stammel from Newport, and Shanil Lalani from Underground. Newport has now pulled out. I know Centennial has pivoted on their plans for the Gulch, and Shanil, I think, is announcing plans for Underground this week. Is this all just a reflection of the interest rates and the cost of doing business right now, or are there other factors, and will we see all of these amazing plans that were presented in March actually come back, or are we going to see scaled down versions of the Gulch and other areas?
I guess that's my question.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So let's go one by one. The Newport was owned by a German investor group. They decided that the office market had moved away. They were renovating 222 Mitchell. The good news is that a local developer has come along. Looks like they're going to replace Newport, and that they're going to take that 222 Mitchell building, an old Bank of America processing center, and convert it to housing. So that's the number one. That's the first thing that's going to happen. They haven't closed on the deal yet, but that deal could have ended up in a much, much more difficult place. It could have gone back to the lenders and would have sat for a while, or they could have declared bankruptcy and nothing happens for a long time. So the good news is I think something is going to happen with the beginnings of what is South Downtown. Shanil Lalani is actually going back to the future and revitalizing the Underground, and we've said this to many people. If Underground existed in another city, you know, kind of cool, historic, under the ground type of stuff, it'd be treasured. We just have had such a storied past with Undergrounds. Had a few really good years in the late 60s and 70s. I was in college here, and believe me, they were incredible good years at Underground. And then, you know, we rebuilt it in the 80s under the Andy Young administration. Sam was a big part of that, and it was good right before the Olympics. And if you remember, we made the announcement of the Olympics was at Underground. Many of you remember that. It was done in Tokyo. We had a big party at Underground. This is the historical part now. And so he's going back to the future and trying to populate the bottom of Underground. And while we wait on the vertical market to come back, the market's really tough for borrowing money anywhere. And then CIM in the Gulch, I went to the game yesterday. There's two huge cranes. There's an hotel and housing going up. They have some other projects. I'm not terribly worried about CIM. They may be on a slower track, but there's two huge projects that will be done before the World Cup for sure. The one we didn't mention was the guy, Carter and the folks over in Summerhill. That project's going very well. If you go down Georgian Avenue, and so things there are still bubbling along. Clark?
Well, it's great to see all the great, big kind of, attractions and events and all that are coming to the city. But as you guys have mentioned, there's a lot of stuff, just the routine, like these conventions that happen every week that most of us have never heard of, or but maybe we've tried to get a reservation at Bones and we hear that the poultry folks are in town or whatever. But other than that, I mean, it's you don't, why they go to Bones, I have no idea. But I love Bones, and I think it's fantastic that our poultry people go to the steakhouse. But that's irrelevant. I guess the big question is I'm a big believer in use case real estate, right? And so we have this downtown that has a lot of potential for redevelopment or repositioning, et cetera. From where you sit and the people that are coming, the people that are being attracted to downtown every week, what do you need downtown that's not there already? And where are those value pockets that we could really, dazzle the commissioners that are coming to pick the next big event, but also for these singles and doubles and triples, that are happening every week? What are we missing that we should think about to make sure we make downtown as vibrant as it could be?
I can take a stab at that. We, for some of you in the room, joined us, the Atlanta Regional Commission, a few weeks ago on our Link trip. It was in Montreal, Canada. And they have an incredibly attractive festival culture there. And I think to the extent that we wanted to entertain more in that way, walkability is huge. Every street is shared between bikers, walkers, and automobiles, with a clear indication that all of it was going to have a place for pedestrian traffic to be successful and thrive. And so I'd say the one thing that we don't have as much of in downtown that probably would contribute to more success in that area is walkability. We've got to get people who are used to being in their cars to agree to be okay to share the road with pedestrians as well, because we've had some demonstration projects, we've had some visceral reactions to those demonstration projects to increase walkability. So, I mean, if I were going to take a stab at it, Clark, I'd say that.
I'll just add, every stadium, big venue in the world is going to tell you we need more parking. So I'm not going to say that. The walkability, the accessibility, the safety of the fan. And a newer problem is, thing I lose sleep off more than anything else with our events is ride share is a problem, which is compounded by some of the just where the building is and the infrastructure around it. More and more people, that's how they're figuring out to get around either public transit issues, or if public transit doesn't serve, they're trying to get an Uber, and you have 25,000 people trying to get Ubers at the same time. It compounds the walkability and the pedestrian access. It also limits your ability to have the festival look. And that's, again, I love Nashville, but I don't love them as much as I love Atlanta. But they're setting the stadium up to do very well in that particular, being able to create a real festival that's walkable right into the Broadway area. So
AJ, we're coming to the bewitching hour 1:15, but I want to ask a final lightning round question of all three of you. What's interesting about Atlanta when you see these folks on stage today is the fact that Metro Atlanta leaders work together. And maybe just very quickly running down the line, AJ, starting with you, and then Anna and Brett, is that unique, and how does it work? Because there's lots of different constituencies out there, lots of different areas of town. How do you make it work, and how does it all fit together that people actually, with their differences, still resolve them? AJ?
Well, Atlanta's always, this is not a lightning answer, but Atlanta has always been an incredibly civic-minded community from the beginning of time. And I can just tell you, business folks particularly, you cannot depend on government to solve your problems in the state of Georgia. And the business community is Katie and others will tell you, and Sam, that we're like the glue that pulls people together and has to talk to all these folks. And it's a hard job, but somebody's got to do it. And it's been successful up to now.
Anna?
I absolutely think so. There are a couple of things that are Metro Atlanta's secret sauce: our diversity, our airport, lots of things. But I absolutely believe that the relationship between the business community, our local governments, our nonprofits, and the way that we work together in order to achieve really big things here, that is something that I haven't seen replicated in any other region that I have attended. Most of the work that I do as a regional leader is staying in touch with the people I must in order for us to be successful. So Katie and Milton and Frank and I are in one group, and then I'm in another group with all of the transportation leaders. And so, yeah, keeping those groups and subgroups together working and talking about what we want to accomplish in Metro Atlanta is critical.
Brett, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm about to start my 9th year here. I've worked in Salt Lake City, Chicago, New York, and Charlotte. There's nowhere close to Atlanta where the business community works together because they see shared stake, shared benefit, shared pain, and I think it's remarkable. There's also no other city I've worked in where you have philanthropic leaders who really give a damn about downtown. I work for one who really cares about downtown working, but there are many others, and so I think it's a really unique combination that makes Atlanta special, and hopefully you'll never lose that.
3 great feel-good answers. Let's give the panel a hand, please. So before we adjourn, make a note, next week, Andrew Morse and Leroy Chapman, What's Next at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution should be a very interesting program. September 25th, Ed Bastian, CEO of Delta Airlines, and October 2nd, we're going to have the cybersecurity panel, which should also be very relevant. So remember next week, sign up, meeting adjourned.